Right.
Now, when my grandmother passed in 2011, I stayed there. You
The
know,
whole thing.
I they well, my aunt told me when she was sick, "You're going to take care of this," and I'm like, "I am."
Okay.
So I went to the residence in Zanesville, picked grandma up, brought her back here, did the embalming and preparation.
Isn't that a
And
weird feeling to separate? Can you
It-
separate the two?
It was tough.
Oh, that's a good
It was
question.
tough. But that's what you're called to do. When you, I like to think of working here like being in the Marines. We tell you to come in and fill out the application, but you really filling out an assignment. You know, I remember there was a gentleman who taught me a lot of what I know when it comes to preparation. Came the opportunity, passed, and they were like, "Could you embalm him?" I was like, "Nope." When I worked with this other gentleman who was from a small community, he said, "We're from this community. We don't get the opportunity to say, no, we can't do it." So
Oh.
when I heard him say that, when it came to my grandmother, I said, "I'm not going to sleep on that." I had a young lady who was dear to me, like a sister. She passed. I tried to embalm her. I tried to embalm for 2 hours, and I said, "You've done enough," and I couldn't do it, and I had to call somebody. But it would only be in that, gravest situation that I would say I can't do it. When I've worked for an hour, 2 hours, and you're gonna do a disservice. So call somebody else in that you know can take care of this. And luckily, God has blessed me to have individuals that could take care of me.
Welcome to Senior Talk with Ms. Bonnie, where each episode we explore the joys and challenges of aging. Join Ms. Bonnie as she talks with experts, seniors, and caregivers about topics that matter to the senior community. From health and wellness, to relationships and family, to finances and social engagement, we'll cover it all. This episode, Ms. Bonnie sits down with Richard Calimam, director of Caliman's Funeral Home, to continue the conversation about funeral pre-planning and some of the services available. So whether you're a senior yourself or just want to understand and support the older adults in your life, you're in the right place. I'm producer Chuck, and without further ado, Senior Talk with Ms. Bonnie.
Welcome to Senior Talk with Miss Bonnie. Let's begin. Today we're going to talk to Richard Calimam. He's the owner, operator, and director of Caliman's Funeral Home, Refugee Road, Columbus, Ohio. We've done an episode on the funerals as far as preparing your funeral. Now we want to talk to someone who's knowledgeable and who works diligently with the families and the daily operations of what goes on in a funeral home.
Right.
Okay, now there's different phases to the funeral home, and it's not a lot, but it's stuff that we don't know, that we laymen just say, okay, I just need a funeral home to help me. But there's all kind of things, all kind of laws, all kind of facets to this service. And as far as Mr. Calimam is concerned, not only do he enjoy his work, he thrives in it. So it's not a job for him. It's where he shows up every day giving the best that he has. Now, if you want to check out, before I go any further, I forgot to tell you that you can always find About That Prepaid Funeral Home on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Be sure to comment, and subscribe. Now, the reason I'm throwing that in is to let you know that, this is a different segment on funerals.
Yeah.
This is from a business standpoint.
Right.
This is from a second generation of funeral preparers, directors, and we just wanted to give you an insight as to what he has to go through, or they have to go through, in order to make everything comfortable for you as best they can at the time of your loss.
Yeah.
He covers things from what happens when your loved one is away from the state they were born in or city they were born in. How does he handle that? And he's going to let you know what, how, and why he is so passionate about this type of work. It is not a job. It is his passion.
When you're done with this, at least I was, I know what to expect. I know the questions to ask from a funeral director. I know what the role of a funeral director is, what the expectations are, and some things that I didn't even consider that hopefully when you're done with this, and we hope and pray that it's a long time before you even have to deal with these services. But you will have a better understanding of how to approach the business side, the technical side of, caring for your loved one after they pass.
Okay. Well, without further ado, let us talk with Richard Calimam, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Without further ado, here's Richard Calimam and questions I have for him. Have yourself a wonderful day. Goodbye. Hey everybody, my name is Bonnie Agee, and welcome to Senior Talk with Miss Bonnie. Today our episode is going to be a little different. It's coming from a different perspective. Today we're getting a professional to talk to us about all the phases of funerals, cremations, people dying out of state, sending people out of state. He has a vast knowledge of everyday questions, and you don't even, you think about it, then it goes out of your head, then it comes back, and then there's nowhere to go, and you're up on it. So, Mr. Richard Calimam is going to put our minds at ease and tell us everything that we could possibly think of to ask him about funeral directing.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. Now today I have selected some questions, but I think I'm gonna do it a little different.
Okay.
Because I found out two things today. Number one, the difference between memorial service and funeral service. That is interesting. A pretty, we all thought it was one and the same. I thought it was one and the same. And my second question is going to be the difference between a coffin and a casket. Okay.
Yes.
So, please explain to me the difference between a memorial service and a funeral service.
So a memorial service is generally where the body is not present. So if you're having a memorial, one of the things that happens to go along with that I didn't mention earlier, was, I don't know if we as African Americans expect there to be a visitation prior to. Some families will say, we're going directly into the memorial. And I'll share with them, do you want to have at least a half an hour where you have some visitation? Because individuals will show up early, and they'll be, number one, looking for a body, looking for someone to view, looking for their loved one to view. And I'll share with them, it's a memorial service, so the body will not be present. Funeral services will have the body present, whether that is funeral service and cremation or funeral service and burial. So those would be the main two things. But it's important when working with the public, understanding everybody thinks it's a funeral, whether it's a memorial service or it's a funeral service. Okay. And so it's good to have that time, I believe, even if it's just a half an hour. And they'll say, well, we're not viewing. Yeah, but you need to consider visitation, and people will arrive. We have, family members or friends that will show up possibly even an hour before visitation may start, even with a funeral. So considering having that time prior to.
Okay. Now, the difference between a coffin and a casket, and which costs the most. There is a price difference, right?
There probably is. A lot of times, we don't necessarily use a coffin. Coffin has 6 to 8 sides. Casket, which we generally use more of, has 4 sides. Mm-hmm. So, when you're considering head, foot, left side, right side, that's what you're considering. As well as we spoke earlier, a coffin generally will have, head, then there'll be right side, left side, and then there'll still be right side, left side as it goes down, and possibly right side, left side, foot at the foot.
Why?
So,
okay, why would somebody even want that? Why would they want that?
Because some people, we received someone that they were on a cruise, they died. I think the closest port was New Zealand. I gather in New Zealand, they still use coffins. So when we received that loved one, they were in a coffin. The final disposition was cremation. So when we took them to the crematory, we took that whole coffin, which was made of wood, and everything was cremated with the individual. It's also, I guess, maybe a little more old world, maybe quote-unquote European, as opposed to in America, most of the caskets that are used are, most, I would say, are metal. Coffins more so wood. I have yet to see a metal coffin. The other thing is as well that when we take someone and they're in a casket, we take them to the cemetery, they're buried in that casket. We don't, take them out of that casket, place them into the grave. That's a full-fledged, that's what the family is paid for, and that's what they're going to get. Yeah.
Okay, let's say someone's already prepaid for. I'm going to get to these, but let's say someone already prepaid their funeral, and something comes up. Do you rewrite the whole thing, or just add on and they pay as they go? From the basic, and it ain't going to be fab, but it'll be additional things like, let's just say in my case, and my choice to prepay was personal, of course, but now I see that I would like a notification in the newspaper other than this little square stating that I died. I did want them to know I accomplished something.
Right.
They got beautiful grandchildren, wonderful son. You know what I mean? And I'm a great grandma. All that's important to me. And I noticed in surely the dispatch that there's pages of. Isn't that by the line?
It is by the line. It can get expensive. I've had families that, wanted something very lengthy, and I said, "Are you sure?" And it cost over $1,000.
Oh no!
I tell families there's a prop or a something that I'll show the family that will show a photograph, will show a certain amount of verbiage, and I estimate in Columbus, Ohio, if that runs one day, between Sunday and Friday, to cost approximately $500. So it can get pretty expensive. Even that small notice that you're discussing can probably run somewhere in between $200 and $300. So,
well, I have to reconsider the newspaper.
Well, and the challenge is that as we've talked about how everything has changed with podcast, with live streaming services.
Right.
I know a lot of families are moving away from putting something in the paper, just simply because of the cost. And so a lot of times I will tell them, why don't you use our website? Why don't you put that information? That is no additional cost. It's part of our service.
Okay.
And that can save you that money, because where we used to get a lot of calls in the evening, when is John Doe's service? We don't get a lot of those calls anymore because they'll go directly to our website. They know it's out there. They know it's on social media, whatever platform that the family has decided to use. When we live stream a service, a broadcast of a service, it's going to be on our website. It's going to be on our Facebook page.
Okay.
It's going to be on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
Sometimes, if we're at church, it may be on that church's website or their YouTube channel. So there's such a diversity when it comes to where a service can be broadcast.
Oh, okay. Now, how can you help me plan my funeral service that reflects the personal wishes and values? Is it just simply what the family wants?
It is simply what the family wants. I've had arrangements where I've sat down, prearranged it, and then at the person's passing, at their demise, family has decided, well, we're going to change it. One person wanted just to be directly buried. They said, let's just immediate burial, not necessarily a graveside service. Then when the person passed, family came in and said, oh, now we want a viewing, and then we'll do the burial. I said, that's perfectly fine. There's going to be these additional costs involved with that. So it can change. I encourage families, if they're concerned about what they want to, there is a document that can become part of that prearrangement. The deceased or the person making the arrangements for themselves can use that instrument, use that document. That document can be placed in part of the prearrangement, and that says, this is the person. Let's just say you weren't confident that your next of kin, your son, wasn't going to follow everything the way you wanted it. And you said, well, I've got a niece. I have strictest confidence in her. You can appoint her as your agent to say, you're here to direct, you're here to establish my funeral arrangements. Now, that's not for everyone.
Okay.
Some
you
people
saw
can
the look on my face.
some people can follow directions.
Yeah.
But you know as well as I do that there are family members that
just
will
cause.
not. They exactly as I mentioned before. This person appointed someone and said this person is going to follow, but they didn't follow him out exactly as the deceased had requested. Yeah. Unfortunate. I don't necessarily agree with all of the arrangements that we make. But what I do believe is in honoring what the deceased would want, because that's it. I believe my fiance wants to be directly cremated. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's what she wants. So I would honor that. I would follow that out just as she had wanted.
Wow. What options do you offer for pre-planning funeral services, and how does this benefit both me and my loved ones? Very simple.
Again, you're looking at either services with cremation or some type of cremation arrangement, or you're looking at burial. Those arrangements can be made and pre-planned, or they can be pre-planned and pre-funded. There's a difference. We have certain arrangements that people have come in and said, this is what I want. We'll take care of paying for it at the time of the passing. There are others that have said, we want to pre-fund that, and a lot of those arrangements, or the majority of those arrangements, can be pre-funded and guaranteed. So if you make an arrangement and the arrangements are $5,000 today, and tomorrow there's $7,000, you don't have to worry about that $2,000 shortfall because they've been guaranteed. Not everything is guaranteed in that arrangement. Certain things that we refer to as cash advances are not guaranteed because they're outside of our scope. Yeah, they're outside. If you talk about cemetery, today's cemetery could be $1,500. Tomorrow it could be $2,500. I would feel comfortable in saying if a family has to come in and come out of their pocket with $1,000, it's a lot better than the family having to come out of their pocket for $2,500 because you still got that $1,500 that's inside of the
I see
prearrangement.
what you're saying.
And you have prearrangements that are not funded. You also have prearrangements that family has said, use this insurance policy to pay for my arrangements. However, they're not pre-funded, so they have the ability to go up as opposed to pre-funding it. Again, the greatest majority of that pre-arrangement is already put in there. You don't have to worry about it going up. There are certain items that we call guaranteed, which generally fall under the funeral director. Anything where it comes to merchandise, our services, those are what we consider to be guaranteed items. And if they go up, the family doesn't have to worry about it. I had a family I was working with just this week. Arrangements went up by... I had arrangements that went up by 500,000. I mean, by not 500,000. They went up by $500.
Yeah.
Family didn't have to worry about that because those were guaranteed items. The things that they did have to be concerned about were non-guaranteed cash advances, like cemetery. Once again.
Okay. How do you accommodate religious or cultural traditions that are important to me in my funeral planning process?
The biggest thing that families need to understand is that we're the director. We're the funeral director. We don't necessarily orchestrate what those services look like. So if there is, and I've had this happen a couple of times where you have some of the family that is Christian, some of the family that is Muslim, they wanted to incorporate both with those arrangements. And so I said, however you want the arrangements, I mean, the services to go is totally up to you. We don't dictate to you, no, you can't have this service.
Right.
The thing that I believe, as long as it doesn't infringe upon anything that I would see as ethical or non-ethical, immoral, I'm not going to dictate to you to say you can't do this. I've had some arrangements where somebody wanted to come in and they wanted to rearrange the chapel, and I said we're not doing that. Our chapel is set up as such. We'll accommodate you if you want this to be incorporated. I encourage you to move that into the chapel, because if not, you're going to have a lot of guests that are going to congregate in the narthex or vestibule, where they actually should go in and participate in the services. Right. And so if you had a bunch of you were in a bowling league, you were a participant, you were a big coach, I believe all of that should be part of it.
Yeah.
But that should be in the chapel with your loved one, not out here where they're not in
separate funerals.
They're not truly being involved
with
the services.
How can you assist me into arranging transportation both for myself and for any family members attending the service? You get in, you got a family car, you got this. That's been the biggest fight of any funeral that I can remember, is who gonna ride in the family car. Who riding right behind,
And I've had families that have said, we're not even getting a family car because we know that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
We know most limousines will seat 6 to 7 individuals. There are transportation resources that if a family wants a 10-passenger limousine or they want a 10-passenger, we have access to that. We don't have them necessarily in our fleet, but it is something that we can accommodate the family at whatever that additional cost is.
Okay, there it is, Chuck. That additional. I like the way you slid that in there.
I gotta tell the truth. You gotta tell the truth.
That's right. Now, let's say with my brother that got killed in California, and my mother just, the funeral home, we just, we praised them. They were so great.
Great.
But they told her, don't worry, we got this, blah, blah, blah. When he gets back, we'll take it from there, blah, blah, blah. They put no pressure on her to pay this. But she knew better, although she was grieving hard because that was her firstborn. And he was so far away. And so, she was getting all our funds together and everything like that. But it was just so hard to know exactly how much this was going to end up being. Although we survived it and everything. And then on top of that, there was a brother that was in prison.
Okay.
So we had to transport him up here. And all of that, they took care of all of that for us, And my sister said, we can't let Mama see him coming to Bubba's funeral in handcuffs, So we had to pay extra to have the handcuffs removed, but this man was on his butt like glue, But it was just, it's so much we don't know that that is accessible to us. That is, you don't have to bury them off by themselves because you think you can't afford it. They were there for us, and they did so well, And she had been dealing with them for, many, many deaths and everything. Do you have a service of something to that effect also?
So we presently. The thing is, that is so fresh because I'm presently working with a family that had a passing out of state. So she called last evening. I said, don't worry about anything. Have the hospital, have hospice, have whomever call us. We'll coordinate everything that is needed to get your loved one back here to Columbus. Didn't hear anything. Cemetery calls today and says, what about this person? Some of the staff was not aware of it. I come in. I said, yes, the family did call last evening. Yes, we need to make coordination of getting this person from out of state back to here. So with that, I shared with the family. Unfortunately, it was one of the family members' birthday. I said, I'm not going to bother you anymore today. I will reach out to you tomorrow, but I will make sure that we make the preparation to get your loved one back here. So that happens to be a thing also as well. When you set with a family, it is important to get them as much information as you possibly can. It's important for family to ask those critical questions that they have concerns about. If you don't ask that question, of course, you don't read minds. I don't read minds. We don't know.
Right.
So when you say to me, we've got a brother who's incarcerated, we want her to be able to attend the services, we can accommodate as much as possible. A lot of times anymore, because of the technology, they're not allowing individuals to get out. So that's where it becomes very important to do the live stream.
Well, Bubba's been dead about 43 years, so that would have been not necessarily commonplace, thank goodness, but it was a doable. Now they can't take that chance.
And so my father, who started in this industry in the mid '70s, talks about working at another organization where the individual that was coming to visit was there for a visit. That was it. They weren't able to stay for the service. They had to be there by themselves. I mean, it was whomever, the corrections officer, or two corrections officers, and that person, the individual got away, and they took chase after the individual. Understand there was some shooting involved. I'm not sure what ended up happening, but It used to be when I came into the industry, they would come in, do some surveillance. They wanted to know where's your ins, where's your outs, where's the deceased. Mm-hmm. They're going to come in, allow you maybe 15 minutes, maybe half an hour to visit with your loved one. And then you're going to go back and right back out to wherever, you came from. Yeah. So over the years, 40 years, I wasn't in the industry. I can't imagine what it was like at that time. But it has been my history now that they would allow you to come in and visit. Now they say the only way that you're going to visit is via video. Mm-hmm. Had a service a couple of months ago. The family did something where it was like on Zoom. Mm-hmm. And so they used that media. The individual was able to actually participate in the services, which was a blessing for them. I believe it was their father. And so they got to say their goodbye. They got to see his father and, participate. But you don't always get that. You don't always know what you're going to be able to provide, what the family is going to want, but you do your best with that.
Okay, what steps do you take to ensure planning process clear understanding? Okay, we don't want to do that. How does you?
Well, no, I think that's important.
You want to do that one?
A clear understanding.
Yeah. Okay.
I know over the years,
I like that.
I've become more understanding. I count this as my passion, as my craft. So if I've been reluctant or reticent or didn't have the knowledge, the information, I'm truly apologetic about that. Mm-hmm. When a family has made me aware, you made this mistake, first thing I know to do is apologize about that, because at the most challenging time, the most grief-stricken time, I want that to be as smooth as it possibly can. And I've made several mistakes, but it's allowed me to get to where we are presently. And I thank God for that. I'm upset, disappointed where I've made those mistakes, and been willing to address and correct those mistakes.
How does your funeral home support families with managing the necessary paperwork and legal aspects? Let's just say somebody, they always ask you if you have a will, and this is what I want, blah 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 blah, but didn't have the money. This is just their desire. But my grandson over here, who has the money, says no, we don't want to do that. We want something flamboyant, and blah 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 blah. Who will you go for? The one that already has the will set, or the person that's really going to pay for the funeral?
We don't. Yeah, correct. We don't deal with the legal aspect, other than the fact that there is a legal order of who's in charge, who's the legal next of kin. So if somebody has a will, 9 times out of 10, probably 99.9% of the time, that will is never read until after the services have been completed. So, again, I go back to that instrument, the assignment of an agent to perform those arrangements. Doing that document, having it notarized or having it witnessed by 2 individuals becomes important. Had a situation that came up a couple of months ago. Family who would have been in charge. There are no children. There's no spouse. Siblings were the next of kin. A significant other was left beneficiary of the policy. The significant other made those arrangements. If anything happened as far as financial, they had to go back to that significant other. That significant other had to make that request of me. I understand, yes, you are the legal next of kin. However, if they don't clear that, that means that's not getting paid for. That's not getting added into those services, into those arrangements. You do have situations that occur. The thing that I'm always going to stand by is that whoever is the legal next of kin, that's who has the greatest right.
Okay.
However, if they don't have the funds, it ends up coming back that the ones that have the funds trump that legal next of kin.
Exactly.
You know,
Gotcha.
unless and I've had to have it where families couldn't agree, and I said, you guys got to come to agreement before we can move forward. We can't move forward. Situation where make the arrangements. We're sitting in the arrangement conference room, making the arrangements. Everybody's in agreement. Mom's going to get half of the remains. The fiance or girlfriend who's paying for the service is going to get the other half of the remains. We have the service. Everything's complete. Cremation has taken place. And now we're in a disagreement. And I said, until you can come to an agreement, we can't leave it. We can't move forward unless you come to me with a court order that says this is the way it's supposed to go. I'm not touching it. And it went on for some weeks, and they finally came to an agreement, and we were able to get past it. Had that happen a couple times, but
it's amazing.
You know, all if these four walls could talk, and you would say, Richard, you're a liar, and I would say, no, I'm not.
Oh my! Can you provide information on pricing, payment options to help me make an informed decision about the services I want to plan?
Absolutely. Okay. So whatever that comes down to, it happens to be, and that's sometimes where you get into where it either becomes pre-arrangement, pre-funded, or simply pre-arrangement. This is what I want.
Okay.
But
you ain't give me the money, so
we don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
I've had arrangements where there was insurance. The deceased said, I want to be directly cremated, no services. The night the person passed or the morning the person passed, the family said, we want to have these arrangements, and we'll come up with the additional funds. Came to find out the insurance was no good. Oh, no. And I think the deceased knew that, and that's why they said, this is what I want, because we had...
She got the last laugh, huh?
We had been down that road with a previous family member, and we had to make some changes with that. And so the deceased knew what it was. So you sort of back up, take a deep breath, and move forward as the family sees fit.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all this information you've given me, but I need to know, what was your inspiration to get into this?
When I as a child, I didn't go to kindergarten, so I started out in first grade. I kind of jumped right in. And back home, they knew my father to be a mortician, a funeral director and embalmer. And, you know, he drove around in a black car and, you know, well, would you ever get involved with that business? I said, only if I owned. So there was a funeral home that was in town that I began to meet with. I finished my college, and they were looking for a funeral director and embalmer, which meant I was going to have to go to mortuary school. Came, met with them on several occasions, and said, I want to be an owner. It is my desire to be an owner. And they had stated to me, oh, absolutely, not a problem. And so I ended up enrolling in mortuary school. I probably got 3/4 of the way through mortuary school. They had a family member that was getting involved with the funeral business, and they basically told me there was going to be no opportunity for ownership. Some things were going on. My father decided it was time for him to step out, but this, of course, was the time for me to actually come into, working at that funeral home. Excuse me. Did my apprenticeship, which is a year long, after I'd finished mortuary school. Came, worked under my father, did my apprenticeship under another firm, and actually ended up having to leave that firm, working at 2 other firms. And then my father called and said, I need you to come here and work. And in between that time, I worked at one firm, and we had to do this training, and everybody at that firm complained about this training. It was the worst. It was a bunch. And I actually enjoyed it because one of the gentlemen that I was working with said, you'll get out of it what you put into it. Mm-hmm. So that was my greatest time of understanding, and understanding that there's not much that I could do if I wasn't doing this.
I see.
It became my passion, and I understand it that in the Christian world, that's what they would call a calling. And I recognized it as my calling, and I said, that's it. Some people, can't eat, sleep, drink without doing what they... I won't say that that's necessarily my case, but not that extreme. But I enjoy it. I enjoy it. And the problem is that because I enjoy it, and because I've become accustomed to doing it, I'm in a transition where I need to move away from so much of the directing, so that I am more so doing administrative duties, and backing myself away from what it is to day-to-day direct, day-to-day embalm, and understanding sort of the executive or business side of things.
Well, this has been quite a journey I just took with you.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has.
And I do appreciate your participation.
Thank you for having me.
I want to tell everybody, Calimans.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Much appreciated.
You're more than welcome. See you next time.
Yes,
okay?
ma'am. Yes,
I'm Bonnie. Thank you for joining us this evening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Have yourself a wonderful evening, and we'll speak with you the next time. I thank you, sir.
Thank you, Miss Bonnie.